Hey, we're talking about common problems and common things, mistakes that we see when a new or remanufactured transmission is being installed in a vehicle. On this section, we're going to be talking about electrical connections. Very, very, very important on these vehicles. We see very, very often somebody will put in a transmission. You know, the installation can be a pretty good job, but they don't clean their electrical connectors. And here in Utah especially, it's a huge problem because we have so much salt on the roads in the wintertime, and extreme heat and the dirt and the mud and the snow and everything. So it doesn't matter how well sealed that plug is where it's plugged in, moisture and condensation can get in there and it can create huge problems with these electrical connectors. This particular vehicle, you can see in here that it shows sign of there's some dirt and a little bit of grease that have gotten into these connectors. It's very, very important, especially on some of these older vehicles, that the wiring will actually start to degrade where it goes into these connectors here. And there's on the backs of these plugs, there's little seals for each wire that seal that wire off. So to try and keep water and grime from getting inside the plug. But after time, they start failing and you will get condensation and stuff inside these plugs. And it'll actually, a lot of these plugs, when you go to plug them back in, you'll see that they'll start to have little white corrosion that starts forming on the pins and on the plugs. It's very important that you clean that off, because if you don't, good possibility you're going to plug that back in and it's not going to have a good connection, and you could be fighting an electrical problem that would have been easily taken care of by just cleaning these plugs out. Most of your auto parts stores have electrical connector cleaner and dielectric grease. It only takes a second. You spray it on there, let it sit for a few minutes. They have quick drying electrical connector, and then they have stuff that sits on there for a little bit and actually sits on the corrosion and breaks it down. After you've sprayed them down, you just blow them out with air real quick, put a little bit of dielectric grease on the plug, and then plug them back in. But I can't tell you how often we see transmissions come back in with a problem after they've been freshly installed. And quite often we see many, many problems with actually grease and dirt and stuff that has been left in these plugs. You try and plug that back in, and all of a sudden you've created a problem for yourself. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to clean these connectors out, because all your grounds and powers and everything for this transmission run through these plugs, and if you get a bad ground or something like that, you could be fighting it for days, and that was your problem the whole time. Another very important thing on these vehicles, and this is older, newer, any vehicle that has electrical going to the transmission, basically, it is a huge, huge, huge problem to see dirty grounds. And that could be on the battery, that could be on the engine grounds, that could be, some transmissions have a separate ground that go directly to them. But we see so often, so many times, dirty battery grounds or dirty battery connections. And in most cases, when you're doing a transmission, you usually take one of the battery cables off and then you put it back on. All of a sudden you have a bad ground or you have a bad electrical connection at your battery. It is a huge, huge problem that we see, and it's very important to make sure that your battery cables are cleaned before you put them back on. Clean both ends of them. Check the insulation where the cable goes into the top of the battery cable, and you'll save yourselves a lot of time and a lot of problems by simply taking care of those grounds on the batteries.